Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 3810A, and today's date is January 4th, 2026, and the title of the episode is Trump is Reversing the Petrodollar System and Preparing to Go Back to the Constitution. Hey, listen, if you're over 40 and planning to retire someday, the window to protect what you've built may be smaller than you realize. Here's a question most people never ask. Is your portfolio built for what's coming next? Many investors in their 40s and 50s discover they have little to no exposure to precious metals. That means their savings are largely tied to markets, policies, and paper assets, with very little protection if conditions change. As retirement moves from someday to on the horizon, protecting what you have already built becomes just as important as growing it. That's where Noble Gold Investments come in, helping investors reduce risk by adding physical gold to their portfolios. Right now may be a smart time to talk with Noble Gold Investments. No pressure, no sales gimmick, just clear answers and strategy built around our goals. Visit X22Gold.com and build your portfolio for the long term. That's X22Gold.com, or just click the link in the description. And remember, past performance may not be indicative of future results. Investing in precious metals involves risk. Consult your financial advisor before making investment decisions. Let's get right into the economic collapse financial news. Now, the deep state, the corrupt politicians, the private West Central Bank, the World Economic Forum, they're losing their grip on the petrodollar system. Remember, going back to 1971, when we came off the gold standard, we were shifted into the petrodollar system, which allowed the central bank to print unlimited amounts of money. Of course, Congress, the deep state players within Congress, had to vote for all this money, and they were able to get it via the central bank. And the only way they could control the entire system was to control oil across the world. This is why they implemented OPEC. This is why Venezuela took over and actually stopped shipping a lot of the oil around the world. They have a huge amount of resources in Venezuela because, again, if there's more oil out in the public realm, that means the oil prices would go down dramatically. Now, of course, with the petrodollar system, you didn't want that to happen. You actually wanted the oil prices to go up to keep up with inflation and everything like that and keep the dollar, the petrodollar system strong. And if you look at what Trump is doing right now, he's releasing the oil, making oil very cheap. Now, think about it. They didn't drill in this country. We have a huge amount of liquid gold under our feet. Why wouldn't they want to do this? Why were they dependent on other countries? Why did they have the control of other countries? Because this is how they controlled the system. Remember, we're not in a free market system. It is being controlled by the central bankers from the very, very beginning. And as Trump basically removes the deep state players from all these different areas and allows the drilling in this country, what's going to happen to oil prices? They're going to come way, way down. And as they come way, way down, is he preparing the entire country to basically remove ourselves from the petrodollar system, which the central bankers put us on, and bring us back to the Constitution? Absolutely. And you can see that we're headed in that way. Now, with the arrest of Maduro and all the assets now released back to the United States, what do you think is going to happen? Oil prices are going to drop dramatically, setting the stage for all of this. And I do believe he is now preparing the entire system to move from the petrodollar system that the central bankers have set up to move us back to the Constitution. And if you notice, he is doing everything in reverse right now. Let's see, the central bank started out saying, listen, we're going to take control of your currency and we're going to tax the wealthy. And then, of course, everyone was taxed. They just used that to convince the people. Trump is doing the opposite. Hey, I'm creating the tariff system that the central bank got rid of when they came into existence. That was the first order of business. When they established themselves in 1913, they weaned us off of the tariff system. And we went to the full central bank system. Actually, if you really look at this, it's exactly what Trump is doing. Let's see. If you go back to 1913, slowly but surely, we were weaned off the tariff system. So all the external money came to a screeching halt. And the central bankers, they all of a sudden became the source of the money that Congress needed. You had to borrow from the central bank. No longer were you getting the external money. So to pay for that borrowing, what happened? Basically, they had to established the tax system, the income tax system. So basically, the central bankers weaned us off the tariff system to bring us to the central bank system, where they went after our money internally. What is Trump doing? Very simple. He's creating the tariff system. He's doing the opposite if you see what's happening here. He's creating the tariff system, bringing in the external money, and then weaning us off of the central bank system, where we'll no longer borrow from the central bank, and he will wean us off of the internal revenue to go, and we will use the external revenue. He's just doing the opposite. And now, what did the central bankers do in 1971 to take full control? They established the oil system, which is the petrodollar system. And Trump, now that he's removing the control of the deep state players and allowing the production of oil, what's going to happen to the petrodollar system? It's going to completely disappear, because as we go back to the Constitution, we don't need the petrodollar system, which means we don't need the controls that are in place. We can allow the open market to decide the cost of oil. Now, if we have tons of oil in this country and around the world, are prices going to go up or are they going to go down? They're going to go down, which means we're going to probably see in the end oil that is, or gas, which is under $1. Hey, listen, if you're over 40 and planning to retire someday, the window to protect what you've built may be smaller than you realize. Here's a question most people never ask. Is your portfolio built for what's coming next? Many investors in their 40s and 50s discover they have little to no exposure to precious metals. That means their savings are largely tied to markets, policies, and paper assets, with very little protection if conditions change. As retirement moves from someday to on the horizon, protecting what you have already built becomes just as important as growing it. That's where Noble Gold Investments come in, helping investors reduce risk by adding physical gold to their portfolios. Right now may be a smart time to talk with Noble Gold Investments. No pressure, no sales gimmick, just clear answers and strategy built around our goals. Visit X22Gold.com and build your portfolio for the long term. That's X22Gold.com, or just click the link in the description. And remember, past performance may not be indicative of future results. Investing in precious metals involves risk. Consult your financial advisor before making investment decisions. Trump is setting the entire stage for all of this. And everything that he puts in place is being done on purpose. And there's nothing the deep state players can do to stop this. I mean, even if they try to go against, like, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, they look like fools. The people look at them and go, what are you doing? Trump is getting rid of the taxes, but you're keeping our taxes in the state? You think the people are going to be all for that? When Trump says, hey, I'm going to get rid of your income tax, you think that these are going to say, hey, by the way, if you elect us, we're going to give you back the taxes and you're going to have to pay even more. Who do you think the people are going to vote for? Well, I think Kathy Hochul's figuring this one out. Because of Trump's one big beautiful bill, what did he do? He removed the taxes on tips. He removed the taxes on overtime. He removed the taxes on those people that get in Social Security. Kathy Hochul, she tried to fight against this. Pritzker tried to fight against this. Jared Polis tried to fight against this. And again, Kathy's the governor of New York. Pritzker's the governor of Illinois. Polis is the governor of Colorado. But Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent accused them of deliberately blocking their own residents from the bill's benefits at the state level. And Bessent made it very, very clear that the states that refuse to comply with the law should expect consequences. He says Treasury stands ready to work with any state committed to delivering on that promise, but we will not stand idly by as this obstructionism drags down the national recovery. This is about fairness. This is about opportunity. And this is about putting America first, starting with families and workers who make our economy the envy of the world. And what did Kathy Hochul do? She caved. She caved on New Year's Day. She announced that New York will finally move to exempt service workers' tips from state income taxes on up to $25,000 in tipped income. Why did she do this? Because the people of New York were very, very angry with her. Remember, the changes only came after months of outrage from restaurant owners and service workers who accused Albany of putting politics ahead of paychecks. The service industry workers noticed and called it a slap in the face to people barely scraping by in such an expensive state. And she saw the polls. She saw what was going on. She said, holy crap, people are going against us. If we're going to maintain control, we're going to have to do something. Now, the people saw this, but the only reason she backed off was because the people were very angry. The people were pissed off. You think the people are going to stay with Kathy Hochul? Most likely not. The only way she could stay in that position is because of cheating. But I do believe that is being shut down right now, and that's going to be very, very difficult. And Trump, he says the U.S. oil companies will go into Venezuela, spend billions of dollars, fix the badly broken infrastructure, the oil infrastructure, and start making money for that country. So let's see. Now we're going to have an incredible amount of oil coming out of Venezuela because now the head of the cartel has been arrested and removed. And remember, who placed that individual into place? That was, the CIA, the deep state players, the central bankers, to maintain control around the world. Yes, there's many different agendas that were happening in Venezuela, but one of them was to make sure that they control the oil supply in Venezuela because they have a lot of oil. Why do you think they implemented OPEC? Why do you think they didn't drill in this country? Because for their system to work, there has to be scarcity. And once again, you could see Trump is now reversing all of this. The Gobisi letter on X put this out and said, in case you don't realize what just happened, Venezuela holds the largest oil reserves in the world at 300 billion barrels. The U.S. is now running Venezuela with large U.S. oil companies moving in. The U.S. now controls the largest oil reserve in the world. Think about that for a second. What's going to happen? Oil prices are going to drop. The central bankers are going to lose control of their system. Trump is just pretty much reversing everything the deep state players, the central bankers, have put into place. Adam Kobisi says, markets have been on edge about geopolitical tensions between the U.S. and Venezuela for weeks now. However, Trump has confirmed that Venezuela's oil infrastructure was not damaged last night. On top of this, Trump says the U.S. will be very much involved in Venezuela's oil industry going forward, and China is going to get oil. In 2020, Venezuela was producing over 3 million barrels of oil per day, now down to approximately 900,000. If the U.S. truly takes control of Venezuela's oil industry, much more supply is coming to the market. Oil and gas prices would head much lower. That is what's going to happen right now. And he's setting all of this up for what? He's setting it up to reverse everything the deep state, the central bankers have done since we came off the gold standard. Now, of course, this goes all the way back to 1913, but you have to remember the central bankers, they were preparing this entire country slowly but surely to go full fiat. Because if you really look at the history of the central bank, you could see what they did. And they needed to become the reserve currency of the world because, again, the UK, their entire system was breaking down. They were running it into the ground. And if you look at the debt back in that period of time, it was around 135 to 150% of GDP. And basically, they were in a deflationary period because they were trying to control the debt, but they needed World War II. And basically, once World War II started, you could see that everything then shifted. And after the war, what happened? The United States became the reserve currency, and pretty much the world was reset. And then moving forward from World War II, you can see the deep state players, they put everything into place to do what? To go full fiat. Yes, it took some time because, again, nobody wanted another war. Nobody wanted anything. Of course, when we got into the 50s, 60s, all of a sudden, war started to pop up once again. And the deep state players, the central bankers, used this to then move us off the gold standard. Because, again, they were printing a lot of money for these wars to take control over certain areas. And the other countries around the world started to figure this out. And they said, well, wait a minute, we want our gold back because right now you're printing a lot more money than there is gold. And this is not supposed to happen because now what is happening, you're devaluing the currency, and we want our gold back. And basically, Nixon came out, and of course, he was probably forced to do this, saying, listen, we're going to be coming off the gold standard because of speculators, but this is only going to be temporary. Well, it's been temporary since 1971. That's not temporary. That's permanent because they set this up and they moved us. And if you look at back in the 60s, Kissinger went across, of course, to the Middle East, set up the petrodollar system all over the place, had the U.S. protect the oil fields in all these different Middle Eastern countries and even Venezuela. And you can see during that period of time, we were able to shift from the gold standard to the petrodollar system. And they needed to maintain control over the oil and make sure that the oil was always set to be pretty darn high. And if you notice, since we came off of the gold standard and when oil took over, fuel prices continually went up, of course, until Trump came into the picture and brought oil prices back down. And yes, it fluctuated over time, but it never went back to the 15 cents, 20 cents, 30 cents that gas prices were. So everything went up. Why? Because they had to maintain control over the system. And this is why they decided, hey, we can't drill in the United States because if everyone found out that we have so much oil in this country, the oil prices would drop dramatically. Same thing with Venezuela. And they had to make sure that they maintained control of these areas, and OPEC actually controlled it. If you notice, they centralized everything to maintain control, just like they centralized the creation of currency. They centralized everything in this country. They took it from the states and they moved it into one location. Now Trump is decentralizing everything and actually decentralizing the creation of oil, because OPEC will not be the only organization that's in control. When we start drilling here in the United States, all of a sudden, we're going to see a lot of oil, which means gas prices are going to come down. With the production of Venezuela, gas prices are going to come down. So will OPEC be the only controlling factor anymore? Absolutely not, which means if gas prices go down and it's a lot cheaper, that fights against inflation. It doesn't get rid of the inflation. It fights against it. It allows the manufacturers to produce. It allows for cheaper manufacturing. It allows for cheaper delivery. Going back to the original way that we had it. Think about why we don't ship glass bottles anymore. Think about why we don't use wooden crates anymore. They're very heavy. And the heavier it is, the more expensive it is to transfer, especially if you're using gas, which we use. So why did we shift to plastic? Did the people demand it? We want plastic bottles. Now they're finding out there's plastic in your brains and things like that, but that's a whole nother story. Why did we shift to styrofoam? Because they had to make it lighter because gas prices were going up. They weren't 10 cents, 15 cents, 20 cents anymore. We weren't paying that per gallon. And now think about it. Is it going to be a lot cheaper now to ship products? Yes, it will. Because gas prices are going to come way, way down. See, everything was created, and these problems that we have today with a lot of plastic, styrofoam, and all these things, it was created because of the central bank system. Because manufacturers, shippers, they had to figure out different ways to make it cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And that's exactly what they did. The central bank caused all of this. If you really think about it, the people never demanded it. It wasn't because, technology is fantastic and we could use plastic now. Yes, we use plastic for many different things. But again, the reason why they did this is because they had to. There was no way around it. And that's why manufacturers were also moved out of this country. Because if they kept them in this country with the devaluation of the currency and high fuel costs, it would have been very, very expensive to manufacture in this country. And people would say, wait a minute, what's going on here? Why is everything so expensive? So if you move it out to third world countries, you have slave labor out there, you're paying them pennies on the dollar, and you don't have any tariffs coming back to this country because it's a globalist system, and you use different loopholes to bring the products back to this country, you can maintain the status quo. And why was this done? Because of the central bank system. Once again, Trump now is reversing all of this. And I do believe he's setting up the system so we can go back to the Constitution, go back to the gold standard. And as he brings the fuel prices way, way down, you're going to see that he's setting all this up. He's setting it up with the tariff system. He's setting it up with the fuel system. He's setting up the whole system with removing the income tax. Everything's being done the opposite of what the central bank has done. And soon, the central bank will cease to exist the way we know it today. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.